Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Thursday. It's July 14th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And being Thursday, this will wrap up our week. No chart lessons on um, Fridays. So anyway, I thought I'd start out by doing our usual, showing you the daily chart and just kind of giving you an idea. And you can see it looks like the support level down here held today. Early this morning when I posted the chart lesson, it didn't look like it would, but that's why you have to wait for these bars to finish and why we don't try to sneak in early on. I mean, honestly, if you took the information off this chart, you wouldn't know if this was a daily chart or a 2,000 tick chart. So this is why we wait on the bars to complete, because early this morning the prices were trading way down here and it looked like prices were going much lower, but now you can see they clearly closed. The support held, it closed much higher, and looks like we're probably going higher. Now that doesn't mean we can't break higher here and turn straight back down, but for now this support continues to hold, and that's kind of what I hinted about in the mid-morning chart, that there was, if this held, that it could hold and we may go higher still. But it sure didn't look like it this morning. It's hard to trust these reads sometime, and but that's what happens. So uh, once you learn to read this chart, trust your reads. That's the only way I can. It's the easiest way to put it is most of the time they're going to be right. The chart doesn't lie. And now that this thing's closed, it looks like we're going to bounce here again. Doesn't mean we will. We may just go sideways over to this trend line, and we could, like I said, we could break higher and turn straight down. We could just go down from here. But the expectation was you'd probably find support here, and the expectation is we're probably headed to this trend line at a minimum. So we'll continue to expect that to happen until the chart shows us otherwise, and that's how you have to do this thing. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Let's flip over to the daily, the 2,000 tick intraday chart, and we'll go through the trades and we'll wrap this week up. And here we have a high level look at it. You can clearly see that we had this spike and channel down, but there was a break here early and we had a new low, and we were kind of heading back to this trend line when I posted the chart. So again, it's possible we could have found another flatter channel or even steeper channel and continued lower, but we had the break, the new low, and notice how we didn't get down to the very lows this time. That's a good sign that, hey, if we get outside there and get a trend going, we may go higher. And you can see we ran up here, accelerated here right around a little after 10 o'clock, and maybe something that this FOM speaker said, maybe it was just a buying spree, generated buying spree. But you can see that clearly there was two measured legs up, and we actually went a little higher than a measured leg. We pretty much got close to testing the overnight highs. But you can see that second leg was giving us a target to fill the gap. We had another gap this morning. We opened down here, and so really the gap is between the open and the low yesterday, but if prices continue, the next target would be the close from the day before. That's generally how it works. They'll try to go back to where we closed and make up all that difference. So, but the main target you're really looking for is from this open until the low, if it's down here, and if we gap up, we're looking from the open up down to the high of the day, the previous day. So don't get confused there, because me not clarifying that's confused people in the past, and they're looking for the wrong things and not quite understanding what we're really looking for there. So, but you can clearly see the two legs up, and that was the target. So that was a good indication that, hey, if we start trending up, we're going to probably test that close. And you can see we tested that and even went higher and still trending higher. This is into the next trading day over here, so anything could happen from here. I'm a little late doing this today. Excuse me, I had a dentist appointment today that I'd forgotten about, and it ran a little longer. It was in the middle of the day, so usually it wouldn't affect any of my timing on any of my stuff, but it ran a little long today, unfortunately. So Anyway, let's zoom in here. Let's go through the trades. Not a lot of trades today, but there's some good trades today. So it got a little iffy right in here, not knowing really what was going to happen yet. It's a little choppy and sideways. But let's zoom on in here and also note that there was PPI news today that came out at 7:30. So you needed to really be flat. Normally these do not make a whole lot of craziness, and it didn't really make a lot today, but that's still a pretty big move there, and it went with the trend originally, so before turning up. So I probably, after what happened yesterday, seeing a red PPI here at 7:30, I probably would have paid attention to that and been flat. So the blue area is where I would say you probably want to be flat from a little after 7 until that announcement. And you can see it caused some volatility real quickly, and before prices headed lower again, and it really just traded up. And it turns out there's a trend channel here. We spiked down into this channel, and we trended down. I don't know that there's really an overshoot here. I just probably don't have that quite. I mean, I don't think there's an overshoot here, but it could have been a slight mild one, but I don't think so. But we come back, we get a break here, close outside, move to a new low, and then we rallied from there. It took a little bit of, I mean, most people are probably thinking like me, there's a good chance this thing could still go lower, and people worried about it. So it took a little bit of finding this trend before things really kind of took off. So, and I think that's just good common sense to be real careful about getting long until you get a really good reason to get long. So, but anyway, you need to be patient this morning, kind of wait. And I mean, there's a possibility you might have gone short right there. It's just a first entry by the counts, but and you wouldn't have necessarily had this trend line or anything there either. So you're just really taking a short there on the breakout of this little. There's a little sideways action there, and there's resistance up here, and you're a little ways away from the EMA. But I'd probably just sit tight and wait, because it's really hard to know what's going on there until we know for sure this trend line's in place. And you didn't get that confirmed till over here. And then you're just sideways, a little failed break lower, but again, I'd want more than that to get long. And you can see we're just working that EMA until finally it comes up, and you actually get a new swing low here. It's lower than that one, so you get a first entry, and it runs up and touches that trend line, confirms it, and turns down. Look how bearish that bar is. You technically could have gone short on the engulfing bar because it broke higher first, and that does give you a close outside this green channel and 2 legs up to a new high as well. So, but you could just wait till this closes to be sure, and then put your sell stop below it. And that was a quick, easy move. Unfortunately, you didn't get a huge move out of it, but that's a quick, easy, right out of the gate first trade, get you on the right track. And then you get 2 legs back. It's technically not a second entry because it goes a little lower here, but that's still 2 legs back, and it's a failed first entry, second entry. So it's a failed second entry long. Just go short there, and that's a good move. You probably get a runner off that. Then you get another second entry short right off the key entry point, and that's close enough to the EMA to say that price has made it back there. So another nice entry, and takes off again. And now we're just getting too far away from the EMA. We're real close to the low down here. And of course we do bounce, but you don't want to be going long in this. I don't see any reason to try to go long in there. Maybe right here, because you test that midline 3 times, you get a confirmed trend here, and you get a failed second entry short. Notice first entry, second entry. So if it breaks higher there, guaranteed it's probably going to be a trap and run up. It's be an easy scalp. Actually, it's right here. And it's an easy, quick scalp, and that's really all you get out of it. Then it goes higher again, but and that's where you really get the third touch of the EMA. Right there. This was just a second entry long coming off the EMA, but you also had that double test of the midline, and this is where you get the triple test and the true failure. But I didn't mark the true failure there because of that bar was just so neutral. So it doesn't really matter. You could have taken that, and you do get the triple test right there. And I thought about it hard, and I wasn't willing to take it in real time, so I wasn't really crazy about marking it because in real time I didn't like it. We should have. I really thought we would take on off here, and when we didn't, but you can clearly see it bounce there. It just, if it would have closed higher or even closed real negative, I might have liked it better. I mean, really on a trap, if it's a short trap, the more bearish it is, the more people it's likely to trap. So this leads me to believe that the buying and selling is pretty equal here. So people are really unsure. It could be that most people thought it was going lower and the buying's starting to come in and brought it back up, but it just closes so neutral. I mean, that's almost, and it's a little sideways there. So I'll mark it green, but in real time, I did not like it at all. So, and of course, this does bounce on up and leads. There's a hidden second entry here, but again, the signal bar is a little neutral, not a great place to enter. But it runs on up. You get a close outside, and then you get a first entry, second entry. Again, that's a failure on a failed second entry long, but it's an engulfing bar, and this is kind of neutral. So again, you could have taken it, but if you do, I explained this before. If you enter and it turns out to be an engulfing bar, you got some thinking to do. You got to say, hey, did I misread it and we're going higher, or is this a little bit of a trap and it's still going to be a failure? And if you like your read that it was a failure, your stop would have to go above the previous swing, which is here, until this closes, and then you put your safety stop right there. Once this, I mean, it already looks like congestion there, but this just made it look more like congestion. So if you didn't enter on the engulfing bar, don't enter that trade. If you entered on the engulfing and you hung with it, you were okay, but you had to ride out some sideways action here. But if you just waited a few minutes later, you got the second entry short here. And again, it turns out to be an engulfing bar. So you probably want to leave your stop up here until this bar closes and then move it one tick below that. But I like that one. It's a second entry. It's right off the key entry point. I mean, you tried to go higher once, twice, 3, 4 times, and every one of them closed inside that trend line. And we should be going to make a new low that's going to be lower than that as well. So that's another reason to like that trade. And if you waited for, if you traded it on the engulfing bar, again, your stop would go up here until this closes. If you waited this close, just go one tick. And you may not have got in it if you waited on it to close. So it just depends on how you played it, because it just gaps over and keeps going. You can see how weak it was there. And it does come back here, bounces off the midline, which you'd expect, and then turns back down. But you can't go short way down there. And then I marked this one. It's a second entry short. It broke higher first. Another engulfing bar. If you wait till it closes, you really don't want to go short into that support. And even if you trade it on the engulfing bar, there's not a lot of room there. So it's really difficult to know. It's just not a great setup. I put the green arrow there because I know somebody will ask me about it probably and why I didn't talk about it. But honestly, don't take that trade. It's not a very good trade. And you can see it would have worked, but it doesn't go far before it fails. And you've already got a new low in here too. That's the other thing, because we only had to go to here to get the new low. And so you more than got a new low in place. And you could argue that you had a close outside and a new low all in one bar here. So prices could go higher there. That's the issue. And they don't go much further before they do go higher. There's a second entry. Technically, that's not a second entry because it's a first entry, second entry, third entry. But this really looks like one leg. But this doesn't really look like a second leg. So I don't think you want to go long there. And I'd be careful going short in here. I just think you have to sit tight. It's just really, prices are just really struggling. They're going higher here, but they're really, really struggling. And I don't see anything I really like. We're not back to the trend line. We didn't get down to the trend line here, so that's not a good sign for going short. And I think the buyers were coming in. It just took a little while for the momentum to pick up and for prices to go higher. So anyway, I don't have it outlined here, but this is really all kind of sideways right through here, and you can see that. If sometimes if you don't draw this stuff, it doesn't look as clear. So always draw your stuff, and you can see we broke out, pulled back and tested it, but then came back, but then that trend line held. But I don't think you want to go long right then. But it does break higher, keeps making higher highs and higher lows, comes back, gives you a first entry, pulls back and tests that line again, and gives you a second entry. I like going long there. Unfortunately, you don't get much more than a scalp out of it. There's a hidden second entry here. If that signal bar would have been a little better and you recognize that hidden second entry, you probably would have wanted to go long there. But the signal bar is just not good enough. And then we come back again, and here we're just kind of stair-stepping down, and no signal bar. That signal bar looks pretty good, but it's an inside bar, and this is really your signal bar. So you can't really use it, even though it turns out to be a great trade, and you would figure prices will probably go higher there. But we did reach the high up here too, and I don't think you could call that an overshoot. That may just be that I didn't draw I mean, it may be an overshoot, but it's not enough that I think most people are going to be convinced. I may have just drawn it a little shy of where we needed to be. So, but yeah, unfortunately, no chance to really catch any of that. And this is a huge momentum move that they can't even sell it off. It can't go much higher, but they really have a hard time selling it off here. And I don't see any. I'd be scared to death to go short up here, and I don't think you really want to go long up here. There is a triple test here that's really. I mean, I really like this in real time, but in the end, I wouldn't take it. So because it was below the EMA, and it's price, you can see prices 2 bars there were kind of stuck closing between the EMA and that support. So you don't know which one's going to win out, and we should be going lower. That's the real key here, is that we should be going lower. And so this was, you do get 2 more legs up, and then you're moving down again. And again, I don't see any reason to buy this breakout because we should be coming to here. And then when we get to here, you can see the bottom just falls out of it. I did mark this one. I marked it green though because we didn't get back to the EMA, but you can clearly see the double top. There's one leg down. We try to go higher once, twice. It's also a second entry short. You can't trade the second entry short because it's the signal bar doesn't qualify, but you can count that as a failure. So, and being right off that key entry point, I would prefer, if you're going to trade it as a failure, you see it off the EMA though. But the trend line is holding, and that's the reason it can't get back to the EMA most likely. And this thing we were due for a correction of some kind. So maybe you take that trade. It's just iffy. I mean, these are ones that might reward you if you get it right. So it might be worth taking a gamble on that one. Come to find out, it just continues to chop before kind of people throw in the towel, and then they capitulate there, and next thing you know, it's going higher again. And this is probably going to be the middle of a pattern. And if we get another trend channel, and maybe you get another leg up, which is what we end up getting. We talked about that earlier. Again, I don't see, we do get a close outside a new low, but I don't see anything here. This one's tempting, but again, we're kind of in the middle of this sideways stuff. And so I just don't think you want to go long right there. You see it finds resistance. It continues to push through, and maybe there's enough room there too, but I think it's just a little early. You want to wait on something better than that. There's a hidden second entry here, but again, I think you got to wait for something better than that. And then finally, you get a first entry, second entry, so there's a failure when it breaks higher there. Technically, that's not a failure because it moves a pretty good piece, but when it's bouncing right off the key entry point with a nice signal bar, and there is a hidden second entry in there, I like going long there. We run on up, and then you get a true second entry. That signal bar is getting close. If it had closed maybe a tick or two lower, I'd say you got to skip that trade. But there's really a double bottom there. 2 clear legs back. right at the key entry point with the EMA backing it up as well. And so I like that trade. And this turns out, it takes it a minute, but this turns out to be the move. I think by this time, most of your smarter traders are saying, we're probably going higher. There's some momentum here. We're probably going to reach this target. It just was a little iffy prior to that, though. And this thing takes on off. I don't see anything up here that makes me want to get long way up here away from the EMA or anything. You want to see it bounce at the midline a few times before you get a good setup that you want to go long there. And you don't ever really get a good setup there. This is the first time it bounces there really, and there's no other good setup there. And then next thing you know, we're running lower, and you get the break. So there's a second entry long here, and maybe you take this one if it weren't for the next bar that's an inside bar, because then now you're going long on an inside bar, and you could get trapped there really easily. So I'm not crazy about that one. And then finally it comes back, it bounces again, and then a second time, and you do get a little separation in there. So now you could say, hey, you really could argue there's a triple test here, but when it bounces again, I like going long there. And then you get a failure right here. Notice it, first entry, second entry. It's not ideal because it is below the EMA, but it's a higher low after all those bounces there. We're probably headed back up here because you're as strong as that trend is up, you're going to get a retest of that high, at least another attempt. And so you got to guess, you got to figure that's where we're headed right here. And it's a little late in the day. I marked it green because it is a little late in the day. It's not a perfect setup, but it's one that you may want to risk. So there's enough room back to the midline. So the midline, since we turned down there a few times, that's a concern too. But technically there's enough room back if you get through, if you push through there. And when you're going sideways like that, you don't worry about the EMA too much. You still got to worry about the midline to some degree. Especially if prices hadn't been going, if they're going back and forth every time, don't worry about it. But you can clearly see here we turned down at the midline there. So you got some concern with the midline there. EMA, not so much at that point. And that takes us into 230. So anyway, we got a reversal today. We'll see if we get some follow through tomorrow. Maybe we will. But this is going to wrap up our week. I'm going to wrap it up and get out of here. It's almost 6 o'clock, and I'm going to get this uploaded so y'all can view it, and I want to get out of here. So anyway, hope you had a good trading day. Hope it's been a good week for you. We'll be back again to do it Monday. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.